So first things first, a very good morning, Andrew. How are you?
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me. Yes, very good. It's a bit dreary outside, actually.
It is.
I know it's a bit, but we keep going.
Good, good. That's wonderful. Andrew, thank you for being with us this morning. There's been a real great buzz around the organisation knowing that we had this time with you. For everyone at home and joining across the country, I'd like to begin with an introduction to our very special guest today, and then we'll dive straight into what I know is going to be a fascinating conversation. Andrew has been an inspiration and a shining light for teachers, pupils and families in how to promote positive, open conversations about diversity, equality and understanding in education. Today, we're thrilled to have him join us at PDSW. Andrew's been a teacher for 25 years and is currently Personal Development Lead for Excelsior Map Trust, which oversees 4 primary schools in Birmingham. He's the author of No Outsiders, Everyone Different, Everyone Welcome, which fosters a sense of belonging in children and promotes community cohesion. And the ethos of No Outsiders teaches children that there are no outsiders within a school community because everyone is welcome. In 2017, Andrew was awarded an MBE for his work on equality and diversity in education. And in 2019, he was listed in the top 10 Barkey Foundation Global Teacher Prize. I'll talk some more a bit about Andrew's other amazing, more recent achievements later in the conversation. To give it a bit of context, a couple of years ago, we were delighted to welcome the beautiful production Penguins to Bournemouth. And this co-production between Cahoots, NI, Birmingham Rep and Prime Theatre is based on the true story of Roy and Silo, 2 male chinstrap penguins who live at New York Central Zoo. And together they hatched an abandoned egg and raised a chick. It's a warm and engaging story about friendship, acceptance, and the ever-changing definition of what makes a family. It featured original music, dance, and magic, and the show left an enduring imprint on our audiences that were lucky enough to experience it. And it also made a huge impact on our staff and our organisation. Andrew is the co-author of a fantastic teaching resource pack that accompanied that show. So taking these powerful and essential themes of friendship, acceptance and family, we thought now was the perfect moment to talk about where as a society we are now, the role that each of us have to play in building a kinder, more compassionate community, and what we can learn from one another and putting our children and young people at the heart of what we do. We're coming towards the very end of Pride Month, it's today, and so it's important for us as an organisation, but also a wider community, to remember that the celebrations that we've marked are just the beginning of the work that we all have to do in supporting the next generation be who they want to be now and always. So without further ado, we're going to dive straight on in. Andrew, can I start by asking you if you can share with us a little of your own journey growing up?
Yeah, certainly. So I grew up in Birmingham and school was a quite difficult place actually, as it is for many children. I definitely felt like an outsider as a young boy. I didn't know I was gay, but I knew I was different. I didn't fit in with the other boys. Didn't like football. In Birmingham, we used to play this thing called British Bulldog. It's a horrendous game. Did you have that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. We don't play it in my school now. I'll tell you, I'll put a stop to it right away. But basically, you have like boys like on one side of the playground, on the other side, you just like run to the middle and like wrestle to the floor. It's just horrendous. I couldn't play that. I wanted to do little dances and things. But also it was exacerbated by the fact that in my middle school there was a boys' girl playground and the girls' playground. That was really hard for me because in infant school that's fine. I had friends who were girls. Now I never really had friends that were boys. But in middle school, from 8 to 11, I was in a playground with all boys, so I had to learn to adapt. I had to learn very quickly to shut off certain parts of me, to be accepted. So that was where that sort of stuff lives with you, really. It was quite brutal, really, a lot of those experiences. And those experiences aren't, unique to me. Many people who are LGBT, or I speak to now, are friends, have the same experiences of feeling like outsiders at school. And another thing that influenced me a lot was my sister, my sister Catherine, who was adopted as a baby and is mixed race, and she was adopted into a white family, living in a very white area of Birmingham, and we never really talked about it at the time, about the fact that she had different skin to the rest of the family. It wasn't. This is the 1970s, so there's no guidance from my parents about bringing up a mixed race child in a white family. No one ever said to them to talk about it. It wasn't talked about. And it wasn't until I went to university and I made friends with someone who also was mixed race. And I said, oh, my sister's mixed race. And she said, oh, how do you feel about that? You know, in a white family. I said, oh, she's absolutely fine. And she said, oh, you saw it. Have you ever talked about it? I said, oh, don't need you. She's fine. There's nothing to talk about. She said, you should ask her next time you go home. So I went home and I was 18, Catherine was 15. Said to her, my friend you this morning, so I should ask you about being mixed race in a white family. And Catherine burst into tears and said, I could never talk about it. You wouldn't have understood. And that had a massive impact on me, you know, because the whole thing about teaching children from 4 years onwards to know who they are and to be proud of who they are and to know that they belong. And actually, Catherine now runs my charity with me, and she loves no outsiders. And she says, you know, it's all about, you know, she doesn't want any child to grow up in a way that she grew up, you know, grew up not knowing where she fitted in. And it's the same for me as well.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. That's beautiful. Andrew, from our meeting a couple of weeks ago, the two words kindness and inclusivity really jumped out at me as being central to all of the brilliant work that you and the organisation will do. What do those two words, kindness and inclusivity, mean to you?
Yeah, it's about recognising that there are other people around us, and the way that we make contact with each other is everything, isn't it? You know, perception is everything. So it's all about contact and relationships, and that's what being a primary school teacher is all about. I'm not a secondary school teacher, but I'm sure it's the same as secondary schools. You know, being a teacher is all about relationships and the way we react to each other and the relationships that we form with children and with people around us. So it's about teaching children, you know, to be kind, but what does kind mean? And it's about putting out and receiving as well. So, you know, the way you behave to other people informs the way they behave back to you. So it's all about community cohesion. And inclusivity is all part of that, because it's about making sure that everyone belongs and everyone knows they belong. I remember back when I first started teaching, I trained to be a Senko, and someone said in a lecture once, inclusion is a feeling, not a place. That was a really good line. It's about, you can say we're inclusive, but unless the children feel that, you know, do you feel included, then it means nothing. So it's about working out how you can make sure that everyone knows that they are welcome, they are included.
Wonderful, wonderful. And that ties in beautifully with my next question. That sense of belonging, we all want to belong, and we all want to feel home. We know that families come in all shapes and sizes, but growing up is tough. You talked about that from your own experiences, and likewise, especially at the moment, parenting is tough. It's never been tougher. What support is there for families in educating their children about the importance of inclusion at home?
So I think that schools really need parents who are in, you know, different families to come to schools to say, can we, you know, help us, or how can we, are you making my child feel welcome? Because schools almost need a green light to do this work. Some schools are worried about parent reaction to talking about, you know, the fact that some families have two mums or some families have two dads. Some schools think that parents won't support it, and that there will be, you know, barriers. So if parents who are in same-sex relationships can go to schools and just say, I've got some books, or, you know, or can I help you, or what are you doing, or can we have a conversation? It gives schools a real bit of support there, a green light to do this work, you know, because it makes schools realise that actually there are people all around in our communities, you know, who need this work. But actually, even if you're not in a same-sex relationship, you still need this work, because this work is about everyone being included and everyone being welcome, and about teaching children that, You know, we're all different, but we can all get along, and we all belong. So really, the answer to your question is it's all about visibility and talking to schools. Schools will absolutely welcome parents coming in saying, you know, how can I help, or you know, what are we doing about this? You know, schools would welcome it. So please speak up.
Great, wonderful. So yeah, home and school standing side by side, really.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Great, great. What great positive examples of belonging have really stood out for you since lockdown? We've heard a lot in the media about the incredible things that people have done, and what specific examples of positive belonging have really touched you?
So one of the things that I'm doing at the moment, I'm doing a weekly newsletter, and it's called Agents of Hope. And what I'm arguing is that schools have to be agents of hope in this time. So the children have seen their world shrink, haven't they? And some children are going to be in isolation for 6 months, and children have got to see when they come back to school that teachers, you know, even if we don't know what we're doing, the children have got to think that we know what we're doing. You know, we've got to be those agents of hope for children. And one of the ways that we can provide that hope is by having, so my school in Excelsior, we have a daily assembly, and I have a newsletter that I send out, and anyone can get it. You know, you can email me and I'll send it out to you. And it gives 5 assemblies for the week, with some spare ones as well. And the whole point of the assemblies is you look at a picture from a current news story. It's always a picture of hope, of community cohesion, and then you talk about it. So you talk about, oh, you know, yeah, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. And an example of that is one of the things that we're doing each week. We're having new kids back, or new classes back. And the first assembly we always do with every class that comes back is assembly about the clapping for carers, because that is a fantastic example of community cohesion and belonging during lockdown. Because when we clap for carers, was anyone saying, right, I'm just clapping for white nurses, or I'm clapping just for Muslim nurses, I'm clapping just for black nurses? No, people were saying, I'm clapping for nurses, you know. And nurses are all different skin colors, all different religions, you know, different families, you know. And the other thing that happened in that time was that everyone was clapping. So you had all down the street, and the picture that we used is a picture of the street where you can see people of different race, you know, people with headscarves on, you know, different families. We were all together, and everyone was united in those moments. So that was a fantastic example of hope that we can, you know, inject, you know, we can remind children about, you know, that actually the UK is a place where people are different, but what we're really good at is working together. Now, that's the message that we need to be giving to children. Just this week, again, there are 5 new pictures this week, and the one today that my school is doing is about a little boy called Tom. I can't remember his second name. Tom had both his legs amputated as a baby, and finds walking very difficult, but he wanted to raise money for the NHS, for a hospital, a local hospice, and so he wanted to walk for 10 kilometers in the month of June, 300 meters a day, and he wanted to raise £500. Tom has raised £1 million in the last 4 weeks. He's also walked. He's made his 10 kilometer target. He's now, you know, over 10 kilometers. And his mum was really proud because he said he even ran one day. Now that is a fantastic story of hope, of community cohesion. Because where's that money come from? It's come from people in the UK, in Tom's community, and outside Tom's community, who don't even know Tom, who see what he's doing, who want to support him, and are applauding him, you know, having a go, you know, and it's about telling children that the world is full of people like Tom, but also people that are sponsoring him. You know, we're in this together, you know, and we are stronger together. And that's the message of the Agents of Hope resource that I've written. The message is that we are stronger together. So it also undercuts any kind of, you know, a division that some children might be hearing. You know, at the start of lockdown, there was the reported rise in hate crime against people of Chinese ethnicity or Eastern Asian ethnicity. You know, it's that kind of thing. We need to be very, very clear. We are stronger together. We have different skin, different race, you know, but we are here together and we can help each other.
Wonderful, wonderful. obviously a number of families have been really hurting on many levels at the moment, but also conversations within a given household can be quite challenging, especially when it comes to talking to children and young people about inclusion. Could you share with us some signposts that we can give families needing extra support, or someone they can talk to if they need a little bit of guidance in helping that conversation within the household?
Yeah, so certainly, I mean, and there's obvious ones like, you know, if you want to talk about specific issues like trans and stuff, there's mermaids that are fantastic. There are groups out there you can talk to. But I'd come back to talking to the school, actually. I'd come back to, you know, I really want, and schools want this as well, actually. Schools really want to work with their parents and their community. You know, it's not like the 80s anymore. You know, even when I first started teaching, actually, at home time, I can remember the teachers would stand inside the door, and when you saw the parent, you would let the parent out. And we'd often never meet the parents other than like parents' evening, you know. But it's really not like that anymore for most schools. You know, we're accessible, we want to be accessible. So I would say to parents, if you're, you know, to have dialogue with schools. But in terms of practical things that you can do, I love picture books, and I'm a massive advocate of using picture books to talk about this kind of stuff. So I've got a little pile here that I thought, I always hope, you never know what, you know, when I'm doing a talk, you never know when an opportunity might arise. So I was going to take one here to talk about little things. It's called Egg by Sue Hendra. This is this actually isn't in my No Outside scheme, because it was published after I wrote my scheme, but it's just perfect. I love this book. And this actually is in the Agents of Hope resource that I've written, which is free, by the way. I can email it to you. So the whole point of this book is that it's about some eggs. There we are. It's got one word. Can you all see this? I hope you can all see this. It's got one word, which is egg. There's no other words in this book. And Sue's been criticised actually for that in reviews, but I think that's a great idea for a book. Anyway, this egg comes along, and this egg is different. It's all the other ones are that way up. This egg looks a bit different. And the whole point of the book basically is that the eggs are saying, no, you're wrong. That's not what an egg looks like. And they are questioning this egg, and they try to make the egg change. They try to make the egg the other way up. Basically, they dress the egg up, and you know, and basically the whole point at the end, the egg gets a trampoline and says, look, let's all bounce around, and they all enjoy this sort of time together. And then they realise that actually you can look different, and you can still be friends. And the last page is them all holding hands together. You can be different, but you can still get along. And the very last page is another different egg comes along, you know, which is a lovely little end to the story. So what's going to happen now? What have the eggs learned? Do you think they're going to accept that egg, or do you think they'll be worried about it? So books like this are fantastic to talk to young children, just to open that dialogue up about just being different, but being accepted.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, I'm going to get that for my niece and nephews. It's beautiful, beautiful. This afternoon, you and I were very fortunate that we're going to be holding another very special event, and we're going to be doing a CPD workshop for teachers and educational leaders. So I'd like to turn our focus, or keep going, I guess, on the importance of diversity education within a school setting. Andrew, could you tell us about what led you into teaching, and what is it about teaching that makes it such a special profession?
I can remember when I was 8 years old, I went into Mr. Penson's class when I was 7 years old, 8 years old. Mr. Penson was like the alpha male of the middle school. He was a sports teacher. He used to walk around in shorts and football all the time. And I knew that his friends wouldn't like me because I was into football. I knew that he probably wouldn't even know who I was, or wasn't on his radar at all. And I was really dreading being in his class. And on the last day of summer term, before we went home for the summer, I happened to walk past Mr. Penson in the playground, and he stopped me and said, "You're Andrew Moffat." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Can't wait to have you in my class next year. It's going to be a great year." And then he walked off. Now that changed my whole world, because, oh my goodness, Mr. Penson, A, knows who I am, and B, he wants me in his class. So for the first time, really, I felt real sense of, I look forward to coming back in September then, it's going to be all right. I felt like an insider, actually, I felt like I was going to be all right. So really, it was about making, I want all children to feel that, all the time, all children to know that they belong. Another example of I always think about, which is, in my other life, I'm obsessed with Eurovision. I'm absolutely obsessed with Eurovision. I love Eurovision, and I go every year to Eurovision. It's dreadful this year; it was cancelled. That really was the world ending. So there was one year. Was it 2000? I'm pretending not to know, but I do know when it was.
You do know. You do know.
2013. It was in Malmo, 2013, and the Russian entry was called "What If." It was all about, what if we, lay down our guns? What if we were all peaceful, we were all friends? And as you walked into the stadium at the start, you were given a little wristband, little light-up wristband, which only lit up during the Russian song. It lit up on the key change of the Russian song, and basically you were waiting for it to happen. Do look for it on YouTube, Russia 2013 Eurovision, and you'll see on the YouTube on the bit, I have this lit up ball on the on the stage, and this backing singer throws the ball into the audience, and I put my face into the audience. Everyone's wristband lights up consecutively, so you can see the light spread across the stadium. It's an amazing moment. So the moment in that moment, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's amazing. We're all together. That's how I want children to feel in their class, in their school all the time. We're all together. It's exciting to learn, and what a great place to be. It's a great place to be. It's about striving for children to feel that, in their schools. Isn't this a great place to be? So really, that's why I wanted to be a teacher. It's about just giving children, that ethos of belonging, and of hope for the future. I've got any question now. What was your original question?
No, that's tick, done, answered. Thank you. No, Andrew, it's joyful, totally joyful. Let's keep talking a little bit about No Outsiders. Congratulations on the success of it. It's huge. And it makes a real difference to teachers and families. So it's a registered charity, and you regularly deliver equality and resilience training across the UK. And just to share with our audience also that you very kindly and generously provide free resources for schools. So it's on the website, www.no-outsiders.com. Was there a specific moment that prompted you to create the No Outsiders project? What were its origins?
Okay, so No Outsiders actually originally was an LGBT project, and it was run by University of Sunderland in 2006, and it was an academic research project that was a 2-year project, and they did a call for schools, the primary schools, to be involved, and the whole point was to explore, could LGBT, equality lessons be taught, in primary schools? At that moment, there was no work in primary schools. That I wasn't aware of any work in primary schools. So I signed up for that in my school in Coventry at the time, and there were 13 schools that signed up, and it was really interesting. But it was just a 2-year project, and so finished in 2008. And there was some academic books, very academic, but there's some academic books written as a result of that. And so after that, I kept using the term No Outsiders, but there was nothing sort of happening around it. I was using it in my work, and then I wrote a resource called Challenging Homophobia in Primary Schools. So again, it's a free resource on the internet. I have it here actually. Here it is. Challenging Homophobia in Primary Schools. This is published by Birmingham City Council. I think Coventry published it as well, and they gave it out free to schools. This is 2009, 2010. But it was just single issue work. That was, what's said in the tin, Challenging Homophobia in Primary Schools. And I just sort of, did little bits here and there, but there's no funding behind it or anything. And then I went to a school in Birmingham, it was a very diverse school, and I was assistant head in that school, and I went to the governors to ask, okay, we're doing this resource, I want to do it in school. And the governor said, absolutely not. There's no way we're doing that here. It's not going to work. This is pre-Equality Act. it's not going to work here. This is what many schools at that time felt, and actually some still feel now. Actually, you know, there's no way our parents will accept this work. You can't talk about LGBT. You're not doing it. So I decided to do it anyway. It was actually the wrong decision, actually. But, you know, there you go. I decided, right, I'm just going to prove them wrong. I was going to do it anyway. So I did it very quietly, never engaged with parents. There was no homeschool policy. And so it's fine until a parent complained that a child went home and said that they'd done this lesson about gay penguins, actually, which we'll come back to later on. And a parent wrote in and said, you're doing lessons about, you know, you're doing gay lessons, you're doing about sex education. I wasn't informed what's going on. And there is then like a roll then of letters coming in complaining. And I actually had to walk from that school. Well, I didn't have to, but it became a big issue for the school. And unfortunately, the press got a hold of it, and there's some headlines saying, "Oh, gay teacher forced to resign by parents." You know, by Muslim parents often as the headlines. It's not quite true that I resigned. I basically apologized to the head teacher and said, look, I'm sorry about this. I've caused this. I didn't involve parents from the start. You told me not to do it. You know, I was never asked to resign, but I thought it was the right thing to do. So I left. But the question was where to go next. And I was embarrassed about that, because that was, you know, I made the wrong decision there and I wanted to put it right. So I went to Parkfield School in Birmingham, which was a 99% Muslim school, because I wanted to this time really work with that community and do it in a different way and get it right. So that's the point when I wrote No Outsiders. And the whole point of No Outsiders is two differences to the original resource. The first difference is it's not single issue. So the best way to teach about this isn't to have the black lesson on Monday, the gay lesson on Tuesday, and the disability lesson on Wednesday, you know, and so on. You don't do it like you have equality lessons where you talk about being black or Jewish or gay or disabled. You know, you teach in context all the time. And that way you teach children that there's always different ways of being different, but there's not one that's more important than the others, and there's not one that's less important. They're just all, you know, they're all together. But what's really important is we don't leave any of them out. And the second difference in a book is that I do a big chapter on engaging with parents. And I say, do not start this work without engaging with parents and showing them what you're doing. And you use picture books as well. And that's the other thing that I did. I thought if I use picture books, I can show teachers, parents from the start, there's no hidden agenda here. You know, I can just show you, here's how we're doing it. You know, and I use picture books that are all, you know, in Waterstones or on Amazon, whatever, you know, available picture books that are non-threatening and just talk about being different. And in the original scheme, there's 35 books that I use, and actually 4 of them reference LGBT, just 4. You know, but actually, but in all of them, you can talk about being different. That's the point. You know, you talk about being different in all of them. So that's where No Outsiders came from. I piloted it first in Parkfield School in 2014, and then it went really well. And then I put it into a scheme and got it published. And then we had Ofsted 2016, and Ofsted loved it. And we got outstanding actually as a school, and they called No Outsiders a key strength of the school. And that was really the point where other schools started to sort of take notice. And yeah, and it just got bigger and bigger from them. And then of course there was last year, which was an interesting year.
Yeah, we'll come to that surely. But many congratulations, Andrew. You are a trailblazer, and we're very lucky to have you as part of our national community. It's really wonderful. So in June last year, in 2019, the Department for Education launched the final statutory guidance to accompany changes to compulsory elements to PSHE, predominantly for secondary education, including relationship education. What are we teaching children in Britain about kindness and inclusion really well? So we often, sadly, tend to hear about the negatives, but I really want to focus on all this, the championing, this amazing work that you're doing. What are we doing really well? But where do we still have to go?
Well, all schools are teaching PSHE, so personal, social, and health education. So so you know, and I think schools are very good at you know, making children feel welcome, making sure, you know, building that ethos of inclusivity. But I think, but what is often missing is the LGBT aspect. You know, it is often missing. It's getting much better actually. So it's about just working out ways that we can make sure that all families are included. And you know, I applaud the DFE releasing the RSE guidance. It's great that for the first time, you know, it's written down that we need to teach children that there are different families. However, I do have reservations about schools, you know, being warned really in the guidance about whether their work is age appropriate. You know, because no one's asking whether teaching about disability is age appropriate or teaching about race is age appropriate. So why is LGBT, you know, why are we asked to think if that's age appropriate? You know, there's nothing age appropriate. There's nothing, you know, to be worried about teaching children that there are two mums in some families, or two dads, or one mum or one dad, you know, or a nan or a foster parent. You know, it's not inappropriate, you know, to talk about that. So that is a place where DFE could improve that guidance. But at the same time, I'm really confident that schools, you know, with or without that word, you know, can do this work. And I'm seeing it all the time, schools doing this work really, really well. You know, making sure all our children are included and you know, admiring that diversity, you know, and encouraging that understanding and acceptance of diversity in their schools.
Are there specific challenges that teachers are still facing, do you think?
I think, you know, after obviously the protest last year, and I think that, you know, while it encouraged lots of schools to do this work, I can understand totally it would also have made many schools worried about a parental backlash to this kind of work. So I think the main barriers are schools worried about parents not supporting work around LGBT, and that's the only place where there's barriers, aren't there? No one's talking about disability or race or, you know, or faith as a barrier. It's always the LGBT aspect. So the challenge is for schools to find a way to do this so that it can bring parents on board, you know, so it's not threatening.
Great. And just a reminder to everybody at home, please do get involved in the chat. If you'd like to send us some questions, we'd love to hear from you. So further to that, actually, Andrew, in February 2019, we've all heard about the protests that emerged at your school against the inclusion of LGBT equality within relationship education, and the No Outsiders project hit national headlines, becoming a focus for equality education in schools. Can you tell us instances that you've seen and experienced where families, local communities and schools have all really come together in glorious harmony to support tolerance and promote diversity? What are those examples that you've seen that kind of shine a light for the way that we can all aspire to?
Yes, so the protests were very, very difficult and very challenging, but you know, we have to remember that it wasn't the case that all the families in our school were on the protest or wanted to take that work away. There was a very vocal minority, and there was a large group of people that weren't parents actually who were leading those protests. So I can think of two examples. There's one where I was getting lots of threats, and the police advised that I wasn't to meet with parents while the protests were on. A mum came to the school, a Muslim mum came to the school to ask to see me, and she said, "My son's being bullied. I need to see Mr. Moffat." And I usually sort out that kind of stuff because I'm pastoral care lead. And the office said, "Oh, so you can't see him?" And she said, "No, I'm absolutely determined to see him. I'm not going to leave until you let me." And they wouldn't let her. So she sat for an hour and a half waiting to see me in the main reception. And eventually I said to the office, "Look, honestly, it's fine. I'll just see her." So I brought her into my office and she said, "Right, thank you for seeing me. My son's not being bullied. I want to talk to you about No Outsiders." It's like, oh my God. I was like, completely, this is exactly what I was being warned about. And I said, I can't talk to you about No Outsiders. She said, no, you don't understand. She said, "You need to know I'm 100% behind you, and there are many, many parents with me." So that was a sort of story that you've got to hold on to, that, you can think that everyone's against you, and it's not the case at all. There are many, many parents, who are absolutely behind this work. And really, I think that while the protests, were very difficult, we were getting daily messages of support from schools right across the country and further beyond, actually, from across the world. We were getting hampers delivered with biscuits and coffee and stuff, from people that we've never met or never going to meet, who were saying this work is important. And there were also lots of letters from LGBT Muslims who were saying thank you for this work, it's really, really important. So it's about, when you're in the eye of the storm, it's about looking out of the storm. Actually, that's what it's about, and being reassured that this will not last forever.
So in June 2019, out of this, a wonderful moment, you led the Birmingham Pride Parade, and you were arm in arm for the first time in Birmingham Pride history with LGBT Muslim members of the community. That must have been such a proud moment and very special for all of you. So the age-old question, but I think it's one, and I personally feel this, it's really important that we address this and we keep talking about it, is we need to take responsibility and understand why are Pride events still needed? Why are they still needed?
Well, I think anyone unsure about why it's still needed just needs to look at what was happening in our schools last year, as to why this is so needed. It's so important. It's about being visible, isn't it? It's about showing, so where I live in Birmingham, Pride is a way of demonstrating that Birmingham is for everyone, and everyone is welcome. And Birmingham Pride actually last year was a real turning point. The two turning points for me was one where the mum came to meet me, and then Birmingham Pride was the other turning point, because it made me feel like the whole of Birmingham was out in support, and I can remember I did a speech at the start of the parade, and then I had to walk. I was taken, by the organisers to the front of the parade. So we had to go from the back to the front. It took 15 minutes to walk to the front of that parade because it was so huge, And as you walked to the front, there were like placards with no outsiders and school stuff, and and all the way around, people were shouting, "No, go on, and good on you," and all this, and that I really needed that, because we'd come out of like 4 months of just hate, really, hate, and so to walk through Birmingham with my Muslim LGBT friends and be so supported was absolutely wonderful. And also, it's worth noting as well that we all expected to be attacked in some way. It was around that time, I can't remember why, but there was a spate of like people being egged in flowers, and I don't know why that was, but we were expecting. So we had umbrellas, we had rainbow umbrellas, and we pretended it was because oh hooray, but no, it was because we expected people to be chucking us at us and flowers at us, But you know what? No one did. And we were told the day before that there was going to be a protest during the parade. There wasn't. I actually was the Birmingham Pride were concerned about my own safety, because I was obviously at the front of the parade, and whatever it is, they employed 2 bouncers, basically, 2 bouncers to walk there. They were never more than 2 meters from me on either side, and we had like strict, we talked about what happened if anything was going to happen. Well, nothing happened, and it just brings home that actually, look, most people are absolutely supportive of this work, So, in answer to your original question, Pride is so important because it's all about visibility. I mustn't take for granted what we have achieved over the last 50 years. And I think, what happened in school last year really sort of blindsided me. And I think, that I was being a bit complacent actually before that. I thought we were through the storm, really. I thought that, it never occurred to me, even like 2 months before the protest started, that this could happen. And it did happen. And that shows that we're not through the woods yet. And that's why Pride is so important. You know, we can't be complacent, and we can't just assume that everything is all right.
Amen to that. Amen to that. We've got an audience question. So this is from Erin. Hi, Erin. Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for what you've shared. I was particularly struck by your comment at the start about having to shut off parts of you growing up. Obviously, there's a lot we can do about visibility and creating an external environment that promotes inclusivity. But how can we, as people who work with young people, and I know there's many of those in the audience today, who recognize the signs that a young person is shutting off parts of themselves? And if we do see this in a young person, what can we do to avoid those long-term consequences that you mentioned were so harmful to yourself?
Right, so it's about finding something about that child that you can then celebrate with them and encourage. You know, so I like the way you do this. I like, you know, what I like about you is, you know, that's a good line. Do you know what I like about you? La, 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 la. You know, that's a really, really good line to say to a child, and every child wants to hear that. So it's about children knowing, and actually, this is I never thought I'd be quoting Ofsted, but this is a line from the Ofsted leader, you know, Ofsted, head of Ofsted, Amanda Stillman. She said something like, it's about children knowing that they're not ill, there's nothing bad with them if they happen to be different. That's a really, really important line, you know. So if you've got a child, you know, who is, you know, different in some way in your class, it's about that child needs to know that you like them anyway. And actually you like them because they're different. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we were all the same, you know? I've stopped using the word celebrate for various reasons. I don't think we need to be celebrating LGBT in schools. I think we need to be accepting it and you know, and being inclusive, you know. But there was a perception last year amongst some of the parents that I was celebrating LGBT, forcing their children to celebrate LGBT, and I wasn't doing that. So I said to them, well, we'll take out the word celebrate then. We don't need it, you know. We seem to acknowledge, accept, you know. But having said that, you know, children need to be celebrated themselves. So if you've got a child that is different, you know, in a class, they need to know that it's about being accepted, and yes, they need to know who they are, and they need to be encouraged to be themselves, basically. It's about encouraging children to be themselves and letting them know that you're okay with that and that you like that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Another question here. Andrew, could you advise us on using LGBT and LGBTQ+ as an acronym? So somebody, as a proud gay man myself, that there are times when, you know, I make mistakes. I use the wrong words, all the rest of it. And especially, I think, in the context of a lot of the very, very important social cohesion discussions at the moment, people are scared of saying the wrong thing or using the wrong things. Could you share your perspective on that?
So yes, obviously I don't want to miss anybody out, but also I'm talking from a primary school perspective. I don't want to, you know, make things too complicated for these young children. So in primary schools, I just tend to use the words LGBT, you know, because I'm saying lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. We talk about what those mean. But yes, in adult conversations, I'll always use the word plus as well, because I don't want to miss anybody out. But I think we can get wrapped up and worried about the right thing to say, and it's more about our inclusive behaviour than our, you know, the worrying about the language that we use. I think it's our behaviour and our actions really that speak more to children.
Yeah, and about kindness and intention, isn't it? That's what shines through. Fantastic, thank you for that. So we talked about penguins earlier on and how important that is to the performance piece was to us at PDSW as a project. So I'd like to talk a bit about the role of the creative arts in nurturing and supporting diversity in young people. Historically, we like to think that it's championing our young people, but there's always more to be done. What arts do you enjoy, and how, from your personal experience, have the arts helped you to find your place in the world?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mentioned before, I'm obsessed with Eurovision and music. So and actually Eurovision has actually informed my Night Skies work, because if you think of what is Eurovision, it's people from different countries coming together, different flags, different languages, so can go through music. So art absolutely is all about bringing people together. And how wonderful to have an opportunity like Penguins. I was so pleased when they asked me to write a resource. I went to one of the rehearsals, and just wonderful to have a piece, a drama piece, a dance piece aimed at young children, 3-4-year-olds. That is just beautiful, and shows in a very non-threatening, very child-friendly way that there are different families, and isn't that wonderful? So I think Penguins was a fantastic and a groundbreaking piece, actually. I was very proud to be involved in it, and yeah, I think what I learned from that, I mean, as an example of for my own school, Parkfield School, we took a class to see that at Birmingham Rep. We obviously had to get permission from parents to go. No parent withdrew their child from coming to see that, which shows how that was a year before the protest, which shows again how the protest came out of nowhere, so the Penguins really gave an opportunity to explore difference just in a new way, in a different way, through the arts. And we did some great follow-up work from that as well, some artwork, and wrote poems, and it's absolutely brilliant.
Wonderful. Yeah, I was going to share, I've been so fortunate to grow up with a loving and caring family and friends, and I was always encouraged to try new things and find forms of self-expression. So for me, it was dance and theatre, and I guess it's about finding spaces that you feel free, that you feel safe. You're obviously with people that share your values, and that certainly helped me to grow. How do you think the creative arts in particular help young people with learning about understanding their identity?
I think because it gives people just another avenue to explore. So anything that encourages children to explore their identity and to explore who they are, where they've come from, their journey, really. Arts, the arts are a fantastic way to explore that, and really give schools an opportunity just to weave in different threads, really, into their curriculum. Schools are always looking out for ways to develop work. There's a lot of pressure on schools, with English and maths at the moment, and it'd be interesting when we go back actually in September. There's calls from different people to narrow the curriculum to catch up. But actually, I think the opposite is true. I think we need to be using arts more actually when we go back to really develop children's confidence in themselves and in their community cohesion ethos post-lockdown.
Wonderful, thank you. So everybody, we've got about 10 minutes left, so do send us through any more questions that you've got. We've got a couple more lined up here. Andrew, what are you looking forward to in the future with regards to equality and championing diversity, and what do you think we're going to see emerge in the coming months and years?
Okay, so I feel incredibly confident about the future of equality in schools because of what I've come through last year. So this time last year was in the middle of these protests, and it was absolutely awful, and I could not see a way out. And obviously, and outwardly, I was very much like, I was very aware people were watching and that people were supporting. So I never felt able to say, I don't know what to do. I had to be like, it's good, fine, it's fine, we keep going, and we did keep going. But look at us now, because if we can come through that, then we can come through anything, And a year on from the protest, what's happened? Well, more schools than I ever imagined are doing No Outsiders. I couldn't continue my role as assistant head at Parkfield School because I was getting so much invites to go and do talks, and I do lots of training days in schools where I teach for a day across the key stages, teach lots of lessons, model film for teachers, then do into the end of the day. And so I was getting called out, and in the September-October term I was out for like 3 days a week doing that, bringing it, and So I couldn't continue my assistant head role. So we decided that we'd try for a year to see whether I could do, I'm still looking for Excelsior for the mat, but I'm, doing training, all the training that comes my way, basically. Now, I never thought a year ago that was a possibility. I thought not, it was finished, actually. When the protest started, I thought no one's going to want to do this. The opposite has happened. So it's made me incredibly confident and hopeful about the future of education and equality, because schools want to do this work, and schools are looking for ways to develop their equality ethos. And this is exactly, one way they can do it. And at the same time, if we can get equality into schools, then that means as society as a whole, we can develop equality as well, and inclusive society helps as a whole. And that's absolutely needed, isn't it? Right now, across the world, we need community cohesion. It's got to be a priority, for us. But it starts in the school. So we are, shaping society of the future. It sounds corny to say that, but we absolutely are. If we can teach our children from an early age to embrace and fight for community cohesion, then that will continue as they grow older.
Absolutely. And I don't know about you, but I've just been so inspired by all the work that families, teachers, youth leaders, community groups, organisations, groups have been doing, especially during the lockdown. It's been absolutely incredible. So let's champion that hope and positivity. Out of that, there's been lots of amazing creative solutions and fun things, especially for our youngest members of the community. A question that's been submitted here: are there any games that children can play to encourage creativity and inclusivity and kindness?
Well, all the books that I use, on lesson plans, I have some kind of role play or some kind of game. So reading the books isn't enough. It's a great start, but you got to do something with it. So I'm just trying to think of a game now. Well, there's one of the books in the Agents of Hope stuff, the post-lockdown resource, and the book's called The Boy Who Loved Everyone, and it's about a little boy who wants to hug everyone and say, "I love you." He's like a 5-year-old boy, and people don't like it. And the whole point of the book is his mum explains to him, "Look, you don't have to hug someone and say, 'I love you,' to show friendship. Let's look at other ways." And they look at a man feeding birds in the park, saying, "Look, he's showing the birds that he loves them by feeding them." And they see someone waving and say, "Look, she's showing love by waving at that person." So the boy learns that actually you don't have to hug someone and say, "I love you," to be their friend. Now, in a post-lockdown school, it's a perfect book to use, because we're teaching children you haven't got to hug each other, two friends, we can do other things. So one of the games, so I was thinking of games they could play while being socially distant. And there's lots of speaking games, like round games, So there's one I did a youth work thing 20 years ago, and we used to do a thing called, who stole a cookie from the cookie jar? Matt stole a cookie from the cookie jar. And you say, "Who, me?" "Yes, you." "Couldn't be." "Then who?" And you say another name. You got something, so you go around. There's things like that, again, music, it's about being inventive, basically. The challenge for us and for me as well, when we go back, is to think of activities that children can play where they still feel they belong, but not actually touching each other.
Right. Thank you. Another question that's just come in here is inclusivity taught, or is everyone aware of it and just needs to be nurtured from a young age? That's a really good question.
That's a good question. I think it has to be taught. I don't think it comes by accident. Nurture it absolutely, but I do think also schools they have got to teach it, because it's about recognizing that some children are going to be hearing different messages at home, and I can't control what messages children hear at home, but I absolutely can control what they hear inside the school gate. And what they need to hear inside the school gate is basically, diversity is wonderful. Isn't it great that we're all different? And I am counteracting any divisive messages that might be coming from elsewhere.
Great. A question here from Zana. Hi, Zana. What can we do to support school students to have open discussion and creative experience if the focus in schools from September is on English and maths?
Well, I would hope that schools don't make English and maths the focus, and we're having this discussion at the moment in my math. So it's about schools being confident about doing the right thing here, and not narrowing the curriculum, because we need to find ways to support our children's mental health and well-being. Having said that, if we're absolutely desperate, then we can use these books in literacy, and that's part of the reason why, based on picture books as well, is to the curriculum is very tight, and even before lockdown the curriculum is tight. So we can always do this kind of work in literacy. We can use the language and the grammar in the books to teach it. You're still getting the message across. So it's about being inventive sometimes.
Absolutely. And from my experience also, that there's some amazing English and maths teachers, like you said, that are already incorporating this into the way that they integrate conversation, so that it's there side by side, so that we don't see it as an either or. I think that's, just to be clear on that, that's amazing.
So one of the things that we're doing in my own school is this daily assembly thing, which we didn't really do before in a structured way. So we start each day, it's only 10 minutes, but we start each day with one of these, basically a no outsiders assembly, assembly of hope and community cohesion. So even if it's only 10 minutes a day, the children are getting that injection. Even if the rest of the day is English and maths, the children are getting that injection at the start of the day when they come in, where we are talking about something to do with community cohesion. So I think we have to find time for that.
Absolutely. And a lovely little comment here from Zana to say thank you. She said, thanks for your leadership, Andrew. And I think we all echo that. You're an absolute inspiration. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us. We're almost out of time. So just to wrap up, I just want to thank Andrew for joining us today. Andrew, it's been an absolute privilege to talk to you, and thank you to everybody for watching online and for being here with us. For further information about Andrew's amazing work, please visit the No Outsiders website. And I know Andrew is very generous of his time and sharing resources, so we're very happy to send those out through our networks as well. And for more information about us at PDSW, please do go to www.pdsw.org.uk. Take care, look after yourselves and each other, and bye for now.